So Dead by Daylight has had its fair share of popularly known slasher icons like Michael Myers, Ghostface, Leatherface, and Freddy Krueger, and they all fit into the aesthetic and horrific tone that the game offers. But of course, there is always room to bring more slasher personalities into the fray, and one of these murderers, born out of the 80s doll craze, really resonated with audiences for decades to come, despite his small stature and comedic wit. When I claim I want this good guy to be a killer and become recognized simply as the doll, people will always be quick to say that his size alone is reason enough for him to never be considered for the killer roster. But I beg to say to the exact opposite for a variety of reasons. And that's the point of this video, to explain to you why Chucky should be a killer in Dead by Daylight.
Because you're an abomination, an outrage against nature!
You just can't keep a good guy down.
We're friends to the end, remember?
Before we get into the gameplay mechanics and reasoning behind making him a bona fide daylight killer, we have to look at the history behind the red-headed plastic miscreant. Before becoming the face we all know and love, or hate, because as a child, Chucky terrified the living hell out of me because you never knew if a doll would just walk around and stab the living daylights out of you. Chucky was a long-haired gentleman named Charles Lee Ray, known to the public and media as the Lakeshore Strangler, inspired by the real-life chain of murders by the Hillside Stranglers in 1978. Charles Lee Ray had a twisted sense of humor, an obsessive personality, and dabbled in the dark side of voodoo rituals, fraternizing with the miscreants of society like his partner Eddie Caputo or his romantic fling Tiffany Valentine, but always being quick to change his mind on how he interacts with them, and then obsessing over Sarah Pierce, wanting to be her one and only, and killing her husband and eventually stalking Sarah to bear witness to her next child's birth. Spending much time with John Bishop, aka Dr. Death, a voodoo instructor, Chucky was devising a way to cheat death, and by learning the chant of Dembella, had a trump card if he were to ever be cornered at death's door. And he did use that trump card. After a chain of crimes and kidnapping Sarah Pierce, local police pursued him and was cornered by Detective Mike Norris one November night in 1988 in a toy store. After being shot numerous times, Charles stumbled into a fixture of numerous good guy dolls, and in a last-ditch attempt at surviving and getting his revenge, chanted the words of Dembella while clutching the amulet, spurring an unnatural thunderstorm to strike the store and transferring his soul into the good guy doll he was clutching. Word spread that the Lakeshore Strangler was dead, but for some reason the doll Charles was clutching during death and covered in his own blood was not taken in as evidence by the police, probably scavenged by a homeless man that would soon sell the ill-gotten doll in a backstreet to a mother desperate to get a good guy doll for her son for his birthday. It would be this backstreet dealing provoked by her friend that would change the lives of many, but namely one child named Andy Barkley. Chucky was a doll containing an evil spirit that could revert to his inanimate, innocent-looking doll form at will, but also could bear the strength of a fully grown man at will due to the powers of the Dembella curse. Chucky would use these tools to his advantage, covertly executing people in rather creative ways, making it seem like his owner Andy was a troubled child behind these heinous crimes. If, however, his soul stayed within the good guy doll he possessed for too long, the doll would become human, with living organs, blood, and flesh. The only way to prevent becoming stuck in the doll forever, Chucky would have to use the Dembella chant upon the first person he revealed his secret to, in order to possess them and take control of their body. However, in later movies, this little fact would be retconned, and suddenly Chucky could possess anyone so long as he possessed the amulet of Dembella. His comedic yet deadly antics would lead to countless deaths, mainly for those who stood between him and his obsession, or those who would impede on his progress to find a human body. Either that, or he's just
Killing in the name of the date with a 6-year-old boy.
he and his good guy body would fail and die numerous times by either gunshots, implosion, decapitation, or being completely eviscerated. However, no matter how many times he would kill him, he would always find a way back into the world of the living in order to find a human body, and more importantly, to kill. The entity typically chooses those with a passion to murder, maim, debilitate, and above all else, torture their victims, as anyone that can reduce hope and cause fear in a poor survivor will be a plausible and lucrative candidate for the entity. Now, Now, in terms of gameplay, many people argue the fact that his height and that he is a doll will not work at all and be a detriment to how he can be an effective killer that can hook survivors. I would beg to differ. His miniature height would actually be an advantage for him, where he would be harder to see, and using the environment to his advantage like tall grass would also work in his pursuit and stealth, maybe even being able to crawl or hide under pallets. However, his height does dampen his speed, so he will not be at the same walking or sprinting speed as other killers, making it where actual stealth and sneaking would come into play. Now, there is no question of what weapon he would wield while chasing down innocent people. The red knife with a snake embossed on it would be a perfect fit for his weapon of choice. Maybe the doll could have a Left 4 Dead jockey-like ability to where he could leap forward, and if he hits a survivor during the leap, will latch onto them. While latched on, an animation of Chucky struggling to stay on while pulling out his knife will begin, and the survivor will have a very hard skill check appear. If the skill check fails, Chucky will stab repeatedly and put them into the down state. If they are successful, Chucky will be thrown off and be stunned for a few seconds, giving the survivor a few seconds to run away. If Chucky does fail to latch onto a survivor, he will trip and fall, causing him to be stunned momentarily. To prevent spamming this ability, you will have to be around a corner, tucked out of sight, or just master the leap in order to make it fully useful. The doll could also be empowered by the entity and be able to conjure good guy dolls up to 6 times. While these guys are inanimate, they could serve 2 purposes. If survivors get too close to them, we'll set off their recorded catchphrases.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Heidi-ho!
Alerting the killer to their proximity purely by sound, and they could also be used to the doll's physical advantage, giving Chucky a secondary ability to go into an inanimate state to trick people into thinking he's just an inanimate doll, and then leap forward at them to trigger the animation or just simply stab them. So you're probably thinking to yourself, but Zackass, how the hell is Chucky and his tiny body gonna get those down survivors to the hook in the first place? People have to be reminded that Chucky isn't a pushover in terms of strength, considering due to the curse, he has the same strength that Charles Lee Ray had as a full-grown man that he had at death. While he was a doll, he was able to suffocate a man with plastic wrap, beat a teacher to death with just a yardstick, and decapitate an intern with metal wire with his wife. He could easily pick up survivors, although for once in the game's history, it would not be the same recycled picking up animation that every killer has had up until this point. So the game devs would actually have to do a whole new holding animation, either by dragging them on the ground by their clothes, feet, or hair, or hoisting their entire body above his head and walking towards the hook. Or hell, the entity has given fantastic and otherworldly powers to killers before. Maybe we can have Chucky with his Damballa curse levitate their bodies with psychokinetic powers to hoist them on the hook. Well, you never know. The possibilities are endless. If the idea of a 2-foot doll is too far-fetched for you to grasp or consider, also keep in mind that Chucky was a killer before his soul was transported into a doll in the first place. Charles Lee Ray was infamous as the Lakeshore Strangler, so maybe having a model of him as the long-haired, shades-wearing, knife-wielding maniac wouldn't be a bad idea to throw out the window. But at the same time, it just wouldn't feel right having Charles be a new killer, not being as recognizable in his original form versus his child's plaything counterpart. There are also cases of Chucky successfully possessing his victims in later films like Curse and Cult of Chucky. And if you don't want to be spoiled, you may want to skip to this timestamp in the video. Are you gone? Or I'm not going to spoil you. I don't want to see that in the comments. Okay, let's go ahead. The end of Cult of Chucky saw to the possession of Nika, the paralyzed, tough-spirited woman who fought back against Chucky until she was finally left alone with him to leave him to his devices. Fun fact, Nika, being played by Fiona Dourif, is the daughter of Brad Dourif, the voice of Chucky and man Charles Lee Ray. So basically, a father inside his daughter. Man, that is some Game of Thrones level of shit right there. Which, by the way, if this does help the developers make this come to a reality, please have Brad reprise his voice acting role as Chucky if this becomes a reality like you did with Ash from the Evil Dead series. But anyways, it could be plausible to having Nika as a killer as well with Chucky's voice, but like I said with Charles Lee Ray, it's a far throw from deviating from the iconic Chucky doll itself. Having the doll have the ability to possess a survivor would seem to be a bit OP, but what if he had a unique item in the similar fashion to the Mori class that allows for an instant kill? Much like in the film series, having the Amulet of Damballa allows its user to transfer their soul to a host body, so instead of the killer killing a survivor outright, Chucky will perform his ritual on a down survivor and possess them, which could take a good 20 to 30 seconds with possible visual effects like lightning and produced wind, depending on if any of the survivors witness the ritual or if players are wise to Chucky's tricks will depend if they know that the afflicted survivor is now the killer. That's right, Chucky will take the persona of the person he possessed. Chucky will assume control of their body, but now brandishing the trademark knife Charles Lee Ray carried behind the survivor's back, making for somewhat of a Team Fortress 2 spy-like game mechanic. However, the possessed survivor cannot heal others, cannot work on generators, cannot have their silhouette seen by other survivors, and will be shown as a killer if the right perks are active. So it's not like he is going to get the drop on you as long as you have some good stuff working for you. Speaking of perks, much like every other killer upon release, 3 associating perks will have to be aligned with him to unlock and eventually use with all other killers. Now the first one will be called Friends Till the End. The first survivor that sees you moving becomes your obsession and you are alerted to their presence. All other survivors will be less aware of your presence, reducing your terror radius for them by 3, 6, and 9 meters. They'll level up as you use it more. The reason I want to use this perk is because in the movie franchise, there is always one person that is completely aware that Chucky is a living, killing creature, while every other person considers them insane and really doesn't think the dolls are alive.
Mommy, I know who is on the kitchen counter.
Andy.
Who,
Andy? I thought I told.
Chucky.
So that would be the best way to incorporate it into the Dead by Daylight series. Now for the second perk, Hide the Soul would come into play. After performing a Mori or possession, the killer's aura is unable to be seen for the first 20, 25, and 30 seconds. Those will level up as you go as well. And the last one that will take the longest to get is called New and Improved. Anytime a survivor is within a 5-meter proximity of a killer's placeable or location-specific powers like jigsaw trap removers, trappers traps, or in this case the doll's good guy dolls, the survivor will have a 5, 10, then 15% chance of revealing their aura to the killer if they're in their proximity. This could be a little bit OP, so let me know if it is. Chucky could also have his original look as the base cosmetic, and then through DLC or microtransactions we could get the stitched up face from Bride and Seed of Chucky, or his revamped look from Curse and Cult of Chucky where he looks a little bit cleaner. New maps could also be featured like the Toy Factory from Child's Play 2, the Military School from Child's Play 3, or the Mansion from Curse of Chucky. And an added bonus to have included with Chucky would have Andy Barkley as a playable survivor in Dead by Daylight. After being tormented and hunted down by Chucky twice, and then confronted by him head-on twice more, after decades, Andy Barkley's vendetta against the cursed doll would be perfect for the entity to consume and then have them hash it out in an endless gauntlet of death and despair and redemption and revenge. Both of them just have this thing of hate towards each other. Giving Chucky the chance to finally kill Andy himself would be an all-eternal thing that the entity would just enjoy. But Andy would have to be the subject of a whole nother video. That's all we have for today, Dollface. This was mainly just a jumbled mess of ideas since I play Dead by Daylight occasionally, but not at a competitive or high skill level. Never hurts to throw out suggestions though. If you liked the ideas in the video or didn't, you can put your 2 cents in the comments. Because hey, if the doll ends up not being powerful enough or too broken, they can always just do a 180 and do a complete rework like with Freddy. If you liked what you saw or heard, you could also drop a like and sub, donate to the Patreon or live streams to be featured on this list over here. This will be my last video for quite a while, as I will be taking an extended hiatus to work on my mental health and try to become a better person and content creator. So hope to see y'all soon, and maybe see y'all at PAX West here in a few weeks. Anyways, I'm Zack S, aka Wow Such Gaming. Like always, don't forget to stay wow.
Hi, I'm Chucky.
Bitch.